In this video, we are going to create this simple pickup and interaction system in Unity, so we are going to be able, for example, to eat this burger, pick up a chest and carry it around and drop it, or pick up this gun and fire it, and of course drop it back on the ground. First, we are going to create this long if statement to create this pickup logic. This will be our prototypical code. Next, I will show you how to use object-oriented programming to use interfaces to make our system more maintainable and to improve generally how we can add new items to our game. I will also try to promote my object-oriented programming for Unity devs video course. The link will be in the description. Hi, I'm Peter and welcome to Sunny Valley Studio Tutorials. Here is the starter project. You can download it using the link in the description, just unpack it and add it using Unity Hub. I'm using the Unity 2021.3.1 version. And to follow along, simply open the sample scene from the scenes folder. Now, if you press play, you will be inside the starter scene and we can see that we have those three items that I want to be able to pick up and interact with. So I will want to be able to pick up and fire a gun, eat a burger, and pick up and carry this chest somewhere else. So that's what we are going to code in this tutorial. Now, before we start, I have prepared for you those items, the simple items, so the chest, the health item, so the burger, and the weapon, so our pistol. And they have some preset, so they have the rigid body and box collider already added to those. We are going to need them to be able to raycast and detect those objects. And we have this highlight script. I will explain it later when we write some code. I have also placed all of those items on a special pickable layer. To add a layer, simply go to the top right corner of Unity, select those layers drop down, edit the layers, expand the layers list and add a pickable layer or whatever you want. We're going to use it to raycast and to limit the number of the colliders that we are going to detect using our raycast. Great. Now to move, I am using the first-person controller from Unity Starter Assets. You can download it from Unity Asset Store. I will post a link in the description. Now this will be important for our scripts. So let's start creating our scripts. Let's go to our scripts folder. And here I have helper scripts. I will explain some of them during this tutorial. For now, we are going to need another script, a custom script. So let's right-click, create a C# script. Let's call it player. And let's open it up in Visual Studio. Okay, we are in Visual Studio and we have our player script opened. I will delete the start and update methods. Now let me paste the code that we are going to be using. Let's start from the properties. So we are going to have a layer mask, pickable layer mask. So this will be simply our pickable layer so that we can detect only colliders that are pickable. Next, since we are using the first-person controller, we need to use the player camera transform to get the forward direction to shoot a raycast in front of the player, so in the direction that the player is looking. So we're going to use the forward direction of our camera. Next, I'm going to have a game object pickup UI. So this will be simply a text, use E key to pick up objects. And we are going to have a hit range attribute, which will be a float value. We are going to have an attribute min1. This is just so that we do not set it to the negative value. And this will be a serialized field as well as the other parameters here. I will set it by default to be 3. And at the end, we are going to have a private raycast hit where we are going to store the result of our raycast, which we are going to shoot in the update. So every frame we are going to shoot a raycast. First of all, we need to reset the old raycast. So if hit.collider is not equal to null, this means that we have already selected something. So we are going to set hit collider get component highlight. This is our script that I have provided for you. We are going to check if this is not null. So question mark dot simply checks if this is null or not. If this is not null, we are going to call on it toggle highlight false, and we are going to set pickup UI set active to false, so we want to hide our UI. Next, to detect our objects, we are going to use physics.raycast. So if physics.raycast, we are going to use player camera transform.position as the origin of our raycast. We are going to use player camera.forward as the direction of our raycast. We're going to use out hit, so we're going to save the information about what we have hit in our raycast hit parameter, and we are going to pass the max distance as hit range, and we are going to pass pickable layer mask as the layer mask to use so that we can only detect objects that are actually pickable. And this will return either true or false. If this returns true, this means that we have something saved in our Raycast hit. So we're going to call hit.collider.getComponentHighlight. Again, we are going to use question_invoke to check if actually this collider has this component highlight. If it has, we are going to again toggle highlight to set to be true, and next we are going to set our pickup UI set active to be true. So we are going to show our text to press E to pick up object. Now let me show you the highlight script. So the highlight script will allow us to set the emission of our materials for the renderers of the 3D object to be enabled or disabled. And we are going to have a list of renderers, we are going to have a color, and we are going to have a list of materials which basically caches the materials of the object. In the awake, we are going to access those materials, and toggle highlight will simply set the emission of our material so that we can see a highlight of this, so that we can give feedback to our player that this object was selected, and we are going to set the color of the emission to be a color that we have set here, so this will be white. And if we set this highlight to be false, we are going to disable the emission to set the material back to its original state, and that's what this highlight script does. Okay, let's go back to our player script, and this will be it, so that we should now see that objects that are selected are highlighted. Just to show you how the Raycast works, we are going to add debug.draw array, and we are going to start drawing array from our player camera transform.position in the direction of player camera transform.forward times the hit range, and we are going to maybe set the color to be color.red so that we can see this Raycast. And now if we have it all, let's save this script, let's go back to Unity. Okay, great. Now in the hierarchy, you should see the split between things that we are going to work with and some scene objects, so the camera, and the environment, so the rest of the environment in our scene. Now we are going to need this main camera reference, but first of all, let's select our player capsule, and I'm going to minimize all of those components. Those were added by Unity in their starter prefab. We are going to drag here our custom player script, and first of all, let's set the layer mask to be pickable layer only, so that we now will be able to raycast only the pickable items. Now the player camera transform is our main camera. I will drag it from my scene subfolder or sub object, and I'm going to assign pickup UI. So I need to expand the canvas, and I have this pickup panel. If we enable it, it simply shows press E to pick up objects. So we are going to disable it, and we are going to assign it to our player capsule as the pickup UI, and hit range can stay 3. So now if you press play, you will see that now our player is shooting a red ray from its camera, and now we should be able to walk towards those objects, and we should see our UI, and we should see the highlight, so the objects are highlighted. But right now nothing happens if I press the E key, so we need to take care of it right now. Okay, so first of all, our player capsule is using the new input system. So we have our starter asset input, player input, and it is using actions. If we select this from our player capsule, we are going to be directed to the starter assets input, and we should be able to access the starter asset, those inputs. If you double tap on it, you will see the new input system window, and this simply shows us the setup that we have. And I have added this drop input, this is the Q, use input, this is left mouse button, and interact input, this is key, and we can access them by expanding the starter asset. And here we have those input action references that we can drag as scriptable objects and assign to our script. So that's what we are going to use in our custom script. Let's go back to our player script. Okay, great. And I'm going to paste maybe below this hit range, we're going to have a serialized field, private input action reference type, and this will be right click here, quick action, and we are going to be using Unity engine.input system. We are going to have interaction input, we're going to have drop input and use input. Now if you do not want to use the new input system, you can simply type if input.get key down, And you can use the old input system, so keycode K or whatever you want to use, but we are going to use a new input system. So first of all, I will slide above the update method and I will create a start method and assign to our input action references some actions, so some methods. We are going to call interaction input.action.performed. So when we have clicked this button, we're going to add interact method. All we need to do is set plus equals the name of the method, right click here, quick actions, and generate this method. We're going to have drop input action performed plus equals drop, right click here, quick action, and generate method, and use input action performed plus equals use. I'm going to right click here, quick action, and generate this method. So here is my third or fourth option here, and we have those methods generated. Those are private void use drop interact, and they take in as a parameter input action dot callback context obj. We are not going to use this. We are going to fill those methods with some custom logic. For now, let's delete the throw exceptions. Okay, and for now, let's fill in the interact method. So we are going to check if our hit dot collider is not equal to null. We are going to simply debug.log our hit.collider.name. And this will be it for now, just to test if we can actually press our mouse button or left mouse button and interact with the object. So let's save this. Let's go back to Unity. Okay, great. Let's select our player capsule and we need to assign those input action references. Let's select our input interaction input, and I'm going to select our interact. Select the drop and add drop, and use, we should have use. Okay, let's now press play. Great, and now if we select this and press E, we should see at the bottom left corner of Unity pickable health. This will be pickable item, and this will be pickable weapon. So now our interaction seems to be working. Time to fill in the code. Before we can do that, we need to understand that basically if we want to carry something, we need to parent it to our object. So in case of our capsule, we need to parent our item, for example, as the child of our capsule. So now if we press play, we're going to be able to carry this object around. And as you can see now, physics is affecting it, so it has fallen down from the table. Basically, that's what we want to do with the default object that we want to carry. Now, if we want to have something like pickable health item that we want to place into the hand of our player, we need to create something like a camera root object, and we need to have a pickable slot. So now if we set our pickable health, for example, as a child of our slot, and we reset its transform, we're going to see that it is now placed inside a hand of our first person controller, and we can kind of carry it like we were holding it. So that's what we are going to do here with those health item and the weapon item. While for the pickable item, we want to carry it just where we have found it, so that it is kind of like a 3D block that we want to place somewhere else. So to be able to differentiate between those different objects, we need to have some sort of classes that will define that this is a weapon, this is an edible object, and this is a chest to be just carried around. So let's create 3 new scripts. We are going to create an item script. We're going to create a second one, which will be a weapon. And the third one will be just food. Okay. Those will just be the types that we are going to use to distinguish those objects. So let's drag our food onto the pickable health, our item onto the pickable item, and our weapon script onto our pickable weapon. We basically would empty those scripts so they would have nothing beside the name of the component, and now we can go back to our player script. Great. Now we need to have a reference to our hand transform so that we can put their items. So I'm going to create a serialized field private transform pickup parent. So this will be our hand transform where we are going to put the weapon and the food item. Now we are going to also need to keep track of the object that we have in our hand. So we are going to add another serialized field private game object in hand item. And we are going to store here what we have picked up. So let's slide down. In the update, what we are going to do is check if in-hand item is not equal to null. We are going to return. We do not want to detect anything else. And actually, let's put it after the first if statement, so we have the chance to reset our highlight from the previous selection. Great, so now all we need to do is add some code into this interact method. So using a prototypical code, we would add something like this. If our hit.collider.getComponent food, so if we have this script food on our collider or on our object, we will debug.log its food. We're going to assign in-hand item equals hit.colliderGameObject, and to make it assigned to our parent transform of the pickup parent, so the hand of our player, we're going to set in-hand item transform position equals vector3.0. We're going to reset the rotation, and we are going to add it, so in-hand item transform set parent pickup parent.transform, and we are going to set false as to the world position stays, so that the object is placed the same way as our pickup transform is. So this is how we would control the food item. And of course, for the item that is, so for the chest, we would have something different, because we need to again check if hit.collider.getComponent item, so if we have this object or the component on this object, we are going to debug.log it's a useless item, and we are going to set in-hand item to be the collider.gameObject, and we are going to set the parent now with the flag world position stays to be true. So we need to we want to preserve the position of this object. We want to carry it around with us. Now, one thing that I forgot to do is, since all of the items have a rigid body, we need to create a rigid body reference RB. And what we are going to do is, every time we find the item that we are looking for, we are going to set RB. So if RB is not null, we are going to add RB is kinematic equals true. So we do not want the object to be falling through the falling to the ground when we are holding it. And of course, we need to set it to be hit.collider.getComponent rigid body. And now we need to copy this to all of those cases. So as you can see, we have a lot of duplicate code, but now let's see if this works, if we can actually pick up a food item and the item object. So let's save this. Let's go back to Unity. Okay. Let's select our player capsule, and we need to assign our pickup parent. So I'm going to expand it, and I'm going to select the pickup slot and assign it as the transform of our pickup parent. Now we should be able to test our setup. I'm going to press play. Okay, I'm going to try picking up this food item, and as you can see, the burger was placed in my hand. I'm going to restart the play mode to try picking up the chest, since we do not have yet the possibility to drop those items. Okay, let me try picking up the chest, and as you can see, this is a slightly different game mechanic. Our chest was not placed in our hand. It is like we are going to transport it somewhere else, but it is not directly in our hand. We can't really interact with it. Great, let's go back to our player script to finish implementing the system. Okay, now for our weapon, our gun, all we need to do is add in this first if statement, or we should add here hit.collider.getComponentWeapon, because this is the same logic. But as you can see, we have some code duplication, and if we want to add something that we want to handle a bit differently, we need to modify this code constantly, so this is not the best code architecture that we can have. But for now, let's focus on implementing this drop logic before we take a look at the use logic. So here, all we need to do is basically check if in-hand item is not null. We're going to set this its parent to null, so we are going to reset the connection between our hand and this object, and we are going to set in-hand item to be null. And of course, we need to do the same with the rigid body as we did previously. So if this object has the rigid body, we're going to check if rigid body is not null. We are going to set kinematic to be false. And this way, we are going to make it fall to the ground. And as you might recall, we have assigned it to our action performed drop input, so this should be Q button on your keyboard. So let's save this, let's go back to Unity. Okay, just to remind you, in this starter assets in the input actions, I have assigned Q key to the drop functionality. So now if we press play, okay, we should be able to pick up this burger and press Q to drop it. We should be able to pick up a gun and drop it. And we should be able to pick up the chest and drop it. So everything works as expected. So now it is time to interact with those items. So create the logic to add interactions between the gun, to be able to shoot the gun, to eat the food item, and with the item, with the chest, we are not going to interact. And that's what we are going to tackle in the next video. If you are enjoying this series so far, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And again, if you want to support the channel, take a look at my video courses. The link will be in the description of this video. See you in the next part.